Welcome to the Kickstart podcast, where we highlight the stories of how professionals kickstarted and navigated their successful careers. My name is Preston, and on this episode, we have the pleasure of hosting someone who first started his career in product before founding Ellis. That is the first all-in-one solution for international students. Sampei, thank you so much for being on the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, Preston.
My pleasure. So for those that don't know who you are, would you mind sharing a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name's Sampei Omichi. Originally from Vietnam, born and raised in the beautiful city of Ho Chi Minh City. I spent the first 17 years of my life there and then moved to the US in 2017 to start my undergrad at Babson College. And, as an international student, I faced a plethora of issues moving to the US, and kind of my story all comes around in that a couple of years after graduating, I decided to start a company to kind of help this niche immigrate to the US.
So it certainly sounds like a very personal problem for you. It's something that you lived through. It was extremely painful. What I want to ask you is, before you started Ellis, though, I noticed that you worked a couple jobs within a product capacity. So after college, I think did you always want to do something in tech? Was that kind of the plan? Or did you have like another career in mind before you came into tech?
I've always been extremely entrepreneurial. So in high school, I started a tutoring company. It started with, myself tutoring, a couple classmates, so underclassmen. And then this eventually kind of expanded that out to hiring tutors and then matching them with parents whose students needed tutoring. And so I always knew that I wanted to start a company. I didn't know what. My short-lived career so far has kind of taken me all over the place. My first internship in college was at a venture capital firm based in Tokyo. I was doing due diligence for Bitcoin startups at the time. This was 2017, so the ICO craze. I did due diligence on the quant stamp investments, which they ended up funding, and has turned out to do really well. After that, my sophomore year, I decided to join a company called River Financial. I was their fourth employee. It was basically 3 people in a room at that time with little to no funding. I joined as their first customer support representative. So I was fielding tickets, fielding calls. And by the end of my 2 years there, I was basically running product. And my biggest kind of contribution there was I was leading the efforts of building out their iOS app. So, building the first place where a high net worth individual could download an app and buy $100,000 of Bitcoin in a matter of minutes. So, there's a lot of pieces that went into that. So capital markets, making sure that the experience is good, having the iOS app as slick and smooth as possible. And that was kind of my first foray into working with product design, engineering, and how all those disciplines play together, and kind of fell in love with that ever since.
Yeah, interesting. And I want to just take a quick pause and just highlight that, because I think one of the coolest things about tech or working with fast growth companies is you can grow and you can pivot multiple careers in just a short amount of time. So you actually started, and I know a lot of people in my network who started in tech the same way. They started in, whether it's in sales or customer success, customer support. And then for you grew into product. When you say product, are you saying product design or product management?
It was a little bit of both. So
Okay.
I did product designed the first iteration of the iOS app, worked with the designer to kind of clean it up, but kind of the core flows and the user experience was largely handled by me. And then after that, it was more product management. So making sure that, engineering had the proper tasks to make kind of this whole thing come to life. And, the capital markets team, making sure that we had liquidity in the right places. So those execution, like large order executions could be executed.
Interesting. So you became product. And then at that point, you said it just confirmed your excitement and interest within product, right? Which is the whole reason why you got another job afterwards. So I believe you had one other product position?
After that, it was straight into Ellis. So I was 19 when I joined River, 21 when I left, and then 21 when I started Ellis.
Wow.
So it's been a journey thus far.
Gotcha. And so this is your first venture-backed company?
That's correct.
Wow. Yeah. So you were entrepreneurial, you experienced customer support, you became product. How helpful was it to work in a product capacity before you decided to create your own software product? Was a lot of people in our industry say it's very, very helpful. It's critical. Some people say it's not that helpful, but we'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
I do think if you're building a high-scale technology company, most of the battle is product, and kind of everything trickles down from there. So, especially if you're building a financial product also means you have to take care of, legal compliance, following the KYC AML laws, and seeing how that plays into the user experience. So I really like that, I could touch a bunch of these disciplines, design, engineering, compliance, legal, and making sure that kind of crafting that in a way where the end user experience is as smooth as possible.
Mm-hmm.
To answer kind of your second question of whether I think that helped me start Ellis, or if I suggest founders to kind of work in a product capacity before starting their own company, I actually think, I don't know how product is run at larger organizations, but I definitely think being involved in the product development cycle at a small scale startup before you start your own thing was kind of very critical in my growth personally. Interacting with designers and engineers on a daily basis, you get to kind of understand how products are built. And I really like the Steve Jobs quote of, everything that's built around you was built by people no smarter than you are. I largely think that people typically underestimate what they're able to do when they put their minds to it.
Gotcha. So let's talk about Ellis. And I know that you're able to give us like a high level of just the pain point, a personal pain point that you experienced previously several years ago before you started Ellis. And then now I think this stayed within your mind. And then now you have a little bit more experience working in different capacities within tech. And then you're like, okay, I'm ready. So how if you can just share your experience for the audience, like how was it just an immediate cold turkey kind of start, or while you held on to your job on the side, did you find a co-founder and you started maybe tinkering away on the MVP to go fundraise? Like how did that work?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think my story is a little different than everyone else. I actually applied. I was planning to stay at River for kind of the foreseeable future, but when I applied for the H-1B work visa, which is a lottery, I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but it's a lottery where basically you have a 30% chance of staying in the US. I unfortunately was not chosen, so I was kind of stuck between either starting my own company to get something called an O1 visa, or basically get deported from the US. So I opted in for the former, and I've always had this idea of Ellis. I had this like vague notion that there should be a company built catering towards international students, and then eventually the entire immigrant class. By 2025, the US government estimates that 50% of population growth is going to come from immigrants. And it's kind of absurd to me that no technology company is specifically focused on this space. In the more tactical way of starting the company. So I found out that I was leaving River April of 2021, began tinkering on kind of this idea. The company started out as a company called Rocket Visa initially. The idea was we were going to automate the visa application process for a bunch of folks. I quickly we made a couple $1,000s. I MVP'd it, incorporated a C corp, all that fun stuff. But I quickly realized that it was not a great business, because you acquire the user once, you help them with their visa application process, and then they leave, right? They basically never need you again. So the idea evolved into Ellis to kind of provide this all-in-one platform for international students, and providing services across the board that you would need to start and live your life in the US. So our strategy is two parts. Phase one of the company is to build products to help you start your life in the US. So, products like a bank account, a mobile phone plan, those are kind of our initial two products, and a debit card is what we've built. Phase two of the company is to build products to help you live your life in the US. So how do you get a car in the US? How do you transfer your driver's license? How do you apply for a social security number? How do you file non-residence taxes? The idea is you have one profile where you could do all of this manual paperwork that was historically very disjointed in multiple systems. And then phase three of the company is to expand it not only for international students, but to the 1.6 million immigrants that immigrate to the US every year. So that's basically our strategy in a nutshell. We're still in phase one, very young company. We're about a year old. Raised about $6 million from top Silicon Valley investors, and yeah, that's been our journey so far.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about just talking about fundraising. 6 million is a significant feat, and I want to congratulate you. Not a lot of companies do that. So even before that happened, was it just you, or did you also have another co-founder in the early days? Like, what did the early team members look like leading up to the fundraising for you to get the seed, and what does the team look like now?
Yeah, so a little context on our fundraising history. We raised $1 million pre-seed August of last year, and then we topped that up with a seed round of about $5 million in April of this year. When we raised the first tranche of $1 million, it was just me. It was me, a pitch deck with 8 slides and an idea.
Amazing.
And we got funded. That gave us the money to hire our first founding engineer. His name's Kirill Chernik, who's also an immigrant from Russia. We built kind of the initial MVP version of the neobank product. So the banking product, Ellis Money, which helped us parlay that into a seed raise that we closed in April.
Wow. And just one more about that, the first tranche. Like, did you have to go through like the nightmare of founders having to do cold outreach and cold calls to all these VCs, or was it through like a network someone introduced you? It just kind of sounded like bam, 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 things happen pretty quickly for you. But we all know that obviously behind the scenes, it takes a lot of work and grit, or sometimes maybe luck. So, how did that work out for you?
Yeah, it was a spreadsheet of 150 venture capitalists that I wanted to speak with. And then next to it was, you look, okay, who is one hop away that I know to that venture capitalist? One of our advisors, Alexander Leishman, who's the CEO of River, is a friend and an advisor to the company. So he was critical in making a lot of initial introductions. And then it's just really using whatever network you have, being as crafty as possible. How do I reach this? I've often found that kind of cold outreach doesn't work at all, frankly. The best way is kind of find someone in the venture capitalist network to make a warm introduction to you. VCs typically like to say that that's kind of the first test if the entrepreneur is crafty enough to find a line to them. And if they can't, they're probably not going to build $1 billion company.
How did this creating Ellis feel any different from your previous entrepreneurial pursuits? You mentioned you're an entrepreneurial person. This is your first venture-backed venture. Was there like another layer of just fear, uncertainty, discomfort? I know when you start anything, there's always a certain level of discomfort and uncertainty, but like, so was it did it feel the same as you kind of all the projects you did on before? Or was it like, oh my goodness, this is the first time possibly I'm raising significant money from venture capitalists, and now it just feels different?
So there's a couple things that were extremely different, and I've learned a lot in the last year. First, the tutoring company I started, I was hiring basically my friends who were peers. So managing was a little easier. Second, the product wasn't extremely complicated. The product is the people, right? So you hire the right people, you have the right product. And then third was we were profitable from day one. Obviously, it's a tutoring company. The economics aren't rocket science. What's different with Ellis is that we had significant upfront costs that we needed. That initial, like, the company could not have been started without venture backing, and so we're not profitable from day one like most venture backed businesses are, and so that's extremely different to me, and it keeps me up at night, frankly. But I know this is the way things go. Second is hiring folks that are way smarter than you. And so a lot of the people that are on our team have 10 to 20 years of experience on top of me. And so, that's been interesting. Managing folks that have 10 plus years of experience is different, and it's more people who have different skill sets. So we have engineers, we have designers, we have BD folks, and customer success folks, and they're all really good at their specific domain, and I might not have full context into what that means. Third is that I think raising venture backing, you obviously have more responsibilities. You're taking not only the venture capitalist money, but they have LPs. Oftentimes these LPs are either high net worth individuals or more oftentimes like nonprofits and university endowments. So you're actually responsible for returning capital that actually matter in the world, right? And you're responsible for something larger than yourself. So that's been a shift for me.
It seems like a lot of learning experiences, just new learning experiences coming to you quickly. So you were able to find a technical founder that went through the same same kind of, I guess, immigration experience as you coming to this country. And then you're able to raise a second tranche. And so I guess at that time, what were your first kind of proper hires afterward? Were they all engineering?
Yeah, so we hired Chris Kelly, who's currently our head of engineering, shortly after that. And then we hired a customer support person. One thing that I learned at Rover was users really like it when they can talk to a human. It seems very basic, but a lot of technology companies kind of overlook the customer support piece. So one of our first hire was a customer support person, and then we hired a chief of staff, so an operations person to kind of run basically if anything didn't neatly fit into a bucket. He handled it, and then we got an experienced designer. So that's one of the things that I think River could have done better is that they could have had a designer earlier on the journey that would have made a lot of things better, had a cohesive brand and voice. So we brought on a pretty senior designer who was at a company called Givelify before this.
Cool. And then are you guys like in office, fully remote? What is your stance on that?
Yeah, so we are hybrid. So we have folks that are fully full-time remote, but our core team is based in New York City. We have an office, which is where I'm at currently, in an industrious, and our team comes in on Tuesdays and Thursdays twice a week to discuss. We do our meetings, we discuss what's coming up for the week, and then the rest of the days we work from home. That's how I like to work, and so I kind of instilled that into the company,
Mhm.
if you will.
Is there
Yeah.
any reason why you chose New York to have an office? Did you consider like other locations, perhaps maybe the West Coast, or maybe not even somewhere in the Midwest?
I wanted to be close to our users.
Mm.
New York City itself has the most number of it's the international student capital of the world. There's so many international students that live and work here, and so kind of the thinking there was, let's start the company here. Ellis Island is not too far away, which is what the name of our company is based off of. So I kind of thought it was perfect. A childhood goal of mine was to live in three cities when I moved to the U.S. Boston, San Francisco, and New York. I went to Boston for college. I went to San Francisco to work at River for 2 years, and then kind of
Mm.
New York was the last stop.
Gotcha. So then you, at this point, you have a really great team. You have a chief of staff, you mentioned designer, engineer, and then you said that you're now in process or you're in process within phase one of Ellis, Ellis's great roadmap. Is that correct?
Correct.
So just to kind of recap for people that are listening, from my understanding, you don't just want to take care of the initial experience of students coming into the country. You want to make sure that, of course, you do a great job doing that. But then what happens when they actually get here, and then all the other additional products that you want to be able to offer them goes along with them. They're transitioning into a life and day-to-day life living here in this country to support them along the way. I think that's fantastic. It just goes back to what you said before. You don't just want to make a business on, for example, just the phase one experience, something that kind of carries along the whole kind of life and journey of your customers. I think that's great strategically. So what exactly are you building right now? You mentioned it was a banking product.
Yeah. So we currently have two products. Ellis Money is our banking product. So people, no international student can actually sign up for a bank account online. Everyone actually has to go into a physical bank branch, carry $1,000 of cash, or however much they brought across the border, show all of their immigration forms, get interrogated for an hour before they can open a bank account at a Chase or Bank of America, or any of these folks. The kind of core innovation that we have is we're able to spin up a bank account for you when you're still in your home country. So you're able to upload your passport and something called an I-20 form, which basically verifies your enrollment into university, and we're able to spin up a bank account and a virtual debit card for you, within 24 hours. And so the idea is that let's capture the users at the ingress of their immigration journey, get them set up with a bank account, debit card, and ideally they stick with us when they're in the US. We also completely subsidize international transaction fees. So any debit card transaction made abroad doesn't get hit with Visa's fees. And then also we subsidize international Swift wires. So the main funding mechanism for international students is wires into their bank account. We completely subsidize that. It's completely free, whereas other banks like community banks, or Chase or Bank of America would charge you anywhere between $15 and $50.
Hmm. How do you guarantee that the users providing very sensitive documents like passports into Alice, like that information and data remains secure?
Yeah, so security is one of our core principles. I won't bore you with the technicals, but we encrypt data at rest and in flight. We collect passport number, first name, last name. So we're collecting a good amount of PII to
Mhm.
KYC the users, and our engineering team works really hard to make sure that that's all secure in our database.
Gotcha. So is the banking product that's currently in production right now, or is that fully live?
Yeah, that's fully live. You can go on, you can sign up for a bank account, you can wire money. We've seen students wire anywhere from $100 to $50,000 to pay their tuition. Um, and you're able to spend from it from a debit card. So I can show you here. We have a virtual debit card, and we also
Hmm.
have a physical debit card that will ship you once you're in the US. I bought my coffee with this morning, and so we can, it's a fully functional bank account.
That's awesome.
Um, yeah. Our second product is Ellis Mobile. So
Hmm.
it's a mobile phone plan. If you're familiar with providers like Mint Mobile or Google Fi, these folks are called MVNOs. They're built on top of a mobile network operator. So the AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobiles of the world. Our product is built on top of the T-Mobile network. What you're able to do is go in the app. You can order a SIM card at home. Again, kind of our core thesis is get everything set up before you move to the US. So if you're
Hmm.
a student in Vietnam, for example, my brother immigrated to the US this year. He was able to order a SIM card through the app, and our SIM kit would be shipped to you immediately within 5 days, and then you're able to get cell service from day one moving to the US. You
Wow.
have a US phone number, you have a US bank account, and then let's simplify the journey to the
Hmm.
to start your life in the US.
Yeah, that's really cool. And for people who are listening, strictly audio, Sampei was kind of to show a sample of the actual debit card and the SIM. And design-wise, looked great. I think you guys are building a software product, but you're also, depending on the product and verticals, you're building hardware as well. So I think it's fascinating instead of it's just being a pure software play. But for someone that's not doesn't really understand the context of the products that you're building. So for someone who's listening, they're like, wow, like a banking product, wow, mobile product, those actually could sound very complex, maybe with possible regulations. Like, did you have to go through a lot of red tape to kind of create these, or was it fairly a straightforward process?
Yeah, I'll start with the mobile phone plan. So our Ellis Mobile product, we had to get an agreement in place with T-Mobile. So that took a lot of work, a lot of paperwork, a lot of negotiating. But after that, it's just a very simple API integration and then ordering SIM cards to them. So working with them to manufacture our custom SIM cards, working with them to manufacture our SIM kits, getting those shipped to our office, and we actually have a label printer in our office. I don't know if you can see it, where we're shipping printing labels and we're shipping it out of our New York office. So operationally, I guess in hindsight, it was extremely difficult because there were a lot of unknowns with working with a large telecom company. But generally, I think it wasn't too bad. Now with the banking product, it was a little more complex because there's nuances with the banking system. We opted in to use a banking as a service provider.
Mm-hmm.
Called Unit, and then on the back end they use Blue Ridge Bank, which is our partner bank where all customer funds are held. It's an FDIC insured bank account up to $250,000. The program management of it was largely handled by them. Obviously, there was a lot of paperwork, red tape. There were no licensings involved, but there was a lot of information security policies that we had to get into place before we can launch the product.
I think from the surface, like an all-in-one solution for international students, I mean, that's a vision that's grand, but to truly execute on all these different phases, specifically like the ones we're talking about in phase one, the mobile and banking, a lot of due diligence and work and grit has to go through making each of these successful. But upon success, you're drastically improving the experience of people going through these. And I forgot to mention, Sampei, I don't know if I mentioned this to you before, but I can also personally relate. And I wish that a product like this existed when I was a student, because I actually went to student in the UK. So I was born in the US, but went to the UK. And I just remember it jogged my memory talking to you. The process of me getting a bank account in Scotland is just what you said. I had to physically go to a bank. It was difficult to do research. It was a whole long process. And then not to mention getting a cell phone or figuring out different plans, being an international person. Well, it was painful. It was painful. So if I went back in time and Alice was around, I mean, I could easily say right now with true confidence that you probably would have saved me a lot of days and painful weeks. So I think what you're working on is really cool. For someone to come and sign up for these, it's free, right? They go to your website, they sign up. Is at any point, phase one, phase two, phase three, phase four, will anyone have to pay to use Ellis, or from the customer's point of view?
Yeah, so our Ellis Money bank account product is completely free. We don't charge
Mhm.
overdraft fees. We don't charge for you to open a bank account. We have no minimum maintenance deposit. For Ellis Mobile, it's a standard phone plan. So we have three plans to date: a 6 GB plan, a 10 GB plan, and an unlimited plan. We charge 35 for the 6 GB plan, $45 for the 10 GB plan, and then $50 for the unlimited plan. So like any standard prepaid plan, you pay on a monthly basis.
Gotcha. So how big is your team right now?
Yeah, so currently our team is 12 people.
Wow.
Six are located in New York, and one person in Knoxville, one person in Austin, one person in Korea, two people in India, and two people in
Wow.
Vietnam.
How do you successfully manage a global team across multiple time zones while making sure everyone is locked into the culture and the energy of your HQ there in New York?
That's a great question, and that's something we're still figuring out. What I like to do is I like to make sure that everyone has a buddy at the company. I found that that does really well for retention. The goal for a CEO, especially for a small team in the first 30 days, is making sure that they have a friend within the company, whether that's remotely or co-located in the same city. I think that's really, really important for the culture.
Are there any values or main principles or tenets that you believe in or you want to maybe instill in every new person that joins Ellis to touch a little bit more about culture and just the internal environment and working at a company like yours?
So there's basically three key principles that we preach to every new hire. One is be customer obsessed, right? We're in the business of simplifying the immigration journey for international students and then eventually immigrants. The company is not the product. The product is secondary. What we're offering is a simplified immigration solution, and our products back into that. So always think from the customer's perspective and make sure that they have the best experience possible, and almost be like a coach or guide to them, whether that's through products or through kind of our philosophy with customer support. So that's one. Second is build impact through simplification. I think it's really, really hard to find people who think simply, making sure that whatever solution that they come up with is elegant and straight to the point. And this should translate into everything we do. So like our products, our internal processes, architecture, features, code, all of that stuff. Making sure that simplicity is at the core of Ellis, given that we're helping students in a very complicated time in their lives. Given that we're dealing with multiple products, I think making sure that everything within the company is simplified is super important. And then third is attention to detail. I like hiring people who spend the extra hour, spend the extra weeks to make sure that every nitty gritty thing in the app or our internal processes or kind of the way we deal with the partners is perfect.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
And people who go that extra mile to craft something kind of beautiful. It's very important.
Especially for what you're trying to build, Sampei, you definitely need people that are very detail oriented and they're willing to move fast, keep things simple, so that you guys can keep executing as you continue to grow. That totally makes sense. For people that are maybe considering joining Ellis, like you've obviously touched upon where you stand hybrid. Is there maybe perhaps some X factor? Like, why would somebody want to join Ellis? Is there something that you guys do differently? You offer something different, or you just, for example, just do the basics like really, really well? Like, why would somebody take a serious look in Ellis as a possible future employment opportunity?
Absolutely. That's a great question. And what I found that resonates with most people and keeps me entertained is that, I get bored very easily and I'm very impatient. Those are kind of my two perils. Ellis is the perfect company for me because I can work across multiple products and explore, many domains. So one, Ellis Mobile is completely in the telecom space, and Ellis Money is in the banking space. Those are two very completely different silos. And so kind of our engineers, our design folks, and our customer support people can actually learn about a lot of things, kind of work across industries. So, you don't really get to do that. Excuse me. You don't really get to do that with other companies. And so kind of joining us will kind of expose you to a broad range of industries, how they work, how products in those companies work, what are the perils, what type of things you have to deal with, like fraud, compliance, all that stuff. So that's been super interesting. And kind of the people who join us really like it as well. Going back to your question about like what philosophies you instill, this reminded me, we have a strict no acronym policy. Because we're working across so many industries, it's very important that the team doesn't get bogged down with nuances of like ACH or like MVNO or IICID. There's a lot of these industries have their kind of specific acronyms that they like to use, and we try to abstract that away as much as possible. One key tenet is never be afraid to ask what an acronym means.
Mm.
And if you're the person using the acronym, if someone asks that, stop using that acronym.
I love that. Again, going back to what you said, keeping things simple as well,
Correct.
right? And just
Correct.
making it relatable to everybody. A lot of feedback that we also get through the audience, Sampei, is like just navigating a team and a company in this environment. I mean, we thought we saw the end of it in 2020, but now we're in the middle of what a lot of people say a recession, or walking up to a cliff, soon to be a horrible recession. So what was your like what are you seeing in terms of the market from your perspective, and in terms of like just hiring and recruiting, especially now that we're filming this is August 2022, where a lot of companies have slowed down. Well, on the flip side, a lot of smaller companies are actually speeding up and becoming more aggressive. Like what are just your thoughts of like what's happening right now and what could happen into the future, whether it's like business strategy wise, but also just recruiting wise as well? Love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, that's a great question. First of all, I think we are in a recession. I don't really know why the administration decides to kind of redefine the definition of it, but 2 quarters of negative GDP growth is a recession historically. We are in a recession. I just want to preface that. Second, we had the privilege of timing our seed round perfectly right before the recession, and so we have enough capital in the bank for 2+ years of runway, which kind of allows us to execute on our vision without worrying too much about the macroeconomic environment. To be completely frank with you, I don't think about it too much. I know that I don't think it would have changed the trajectory of our company if there was a recession or if there wasn't a recession. The core risk of early stage startups actually isn't the macroeconomic environment. It's more finding product market fit.
Mm-hmm.
And so
What's
that's
your
more what we're focused on.
Gotcha. When it comes to, I guess, recruiting, I guess what were your recruiting goals for this year? And then what were your recruiting goals next year? And then has that shifted based on macroeconomic factors? But like you said just 5 seconds ago, you're not really concerned. So maybe like whatever your plans are next year is not really going to change, whatever happens around the world. And then what are your thoughts of like a small company like you trying to go after the best talent, where you're competing with much larger companies with much larger purse strings and even big tech? A lot of times, early stage companies fall in, from my experience working with many, two different camps. On one hand, you get those that really want to attract people that are truly bought into the vision. And because of that, just going back to basic comp, what we're seeing is a lot of emphasis on equity with a very weak, well, a little bit weaker or maybe not as competitive salary. Whereas on the other side, we see small companies are like, you know what, like we want to hire the best people and we want to be able to be competitive as possible, knowing that it's going to make them stretch because they're just operating off of a seed and not a series B, C, D. So how do you approach that? And how do you, I guess, how does that carry on to you actually recruiting and your recruiting strategy, or even let alone just hiring people, good people?
The way I like to look at it is we want the best people who are passionate about our vision of simplifying the immigration journey for the next billion Americans. That's where we start. Everything kind of falls back from there. We pay, extremely competitive salaries. I think we're at the 90th percentile for most tech startups. And, kind of we try to get the best people in the door, period, end of story. I think, again, back to the simplicity comment, we want to do as much with as little as possible. And I'm not convinced that you need a team of 100 engineers to do that. I think many, many big and successful companies can be built with a team of maybe 20 engineers. In terms of our recruiting strategy for this year, we have the goal of getting our engineering team to 5 people. We've largely done that. We're sending out our last offer today. And then, we're going to kind of be slowing down on the hiring front because we've met our hiring goals. Execute on our strategy through June, July, August of next year, and then reevaluate what resources we need from there.
What are some of your favorite resources to find people? Is it mainly through referrals and networks? I know that's always a favorite for smaller teams. Have you found success with any specific channels?
Yeah, referrals are great. There are a bunch of companies out there that have hiring platforms, like Lastkey or any of these folks. Those have been helpful. Folks like yourself, Preston, funneling candidates our way has been great. So just trying a bunch of strategies. But a lot of our hires have actually come from referrals. So folks from the team referring their friends or former coworkers that they worked with and can vouch for.
Gotcha. And I definitely appreciate you sharing that. I think it definitely makes sense for a small company to be able to maximize and use as many resources as possible just to kind of keep the
Yeah.
pipeline strong and moving forward.
Triple Byte has been great for us, actually.
Triple Byte. I actually heard
Yeah.
great things about that. So for people who are just also curious, like from the founder's perspective, like now you have a small but fast growing critical team. Like what does your day-to-day look like?
Wow, that's a great question. My day to day is gotten to a point where I am less hands-on with the product, unfortunately. That's something I really enjoy doing, but my job a lot entails, making sure everyone is rowing in the right direction and has direction to execute on the strategy. Currently, what I'm doing and what my day to day has looked like for the past couple of weeks is kind of exploring what's next. What's our next product that we build? How does that fit into the vision? How does that play into our first two products? And so more high level strategic work, talking to people way smarter than me who have
Mhm.
been in the tech field for a while. And then third is just like putting out fires. There's always a new thing broken every day. You get texts at 2 in the morning, especially because our team is global, like, hey, this doesn't work, or hey, this thing's broken, hey, this customer is angry, and making sure that nothing blows up. So putting out fires is a big part of my job currently.
Well, I hope you're getting some ample sleep as well
Yeah.
through the time being. And I guess for someone who's made it this far, and honestly, Senpai, you just frankly just made it look really easy. I think for someone who is not from the US, who moved in here, went to a great college and had a great job, and then just dove straight in um, into the tech industry, becoming a founder and raising just an amount that's not common. Like, what if you were to give maybe an advice or some of the lessons learned that you learned along the way for would-be founders that hope one day to follow in your footsteps? Like, what would it be?
That's a tough question. I think it's really important for someone to find a problem they're passionate about. I think that's step one. Find something you want to solve in the world. Maybe a company isn't the best idea. I think everyone wants to start a company. Maybe it's a nonprofit. Maybe it's a YouTube channel. I don't know what the answer is. But like, the company is not the end all be all to solve a problem. So first, find a problem that you want to solve. A company, think of a company as like a mechanism to achieve that goal. For advice for people who want to raise venture capital, my biggest advice is go work at a startup. Go work at an early stage startup. Find out how the sausage is made, and then evaluate whether you want to do this for the rest of your life, or at least 10 years, right? Because it takes 5 to 10 years to build something substantial in the world. Yeah, my biggest advice would be, go work at an early stage startup, and don't be afraid to do, the grunt work. I was fielding customer support tickets. I was ordering the snacks at the office. Everyone has to start somewhere.
Would you think if you've gone back in time, you would have? I mean, I think you even said that you would have stayed at that job much longer. And then even if you were to start a company like Ellis, it wouldn't happen for much that as soon as it probably would have, right? If it weren't for the visa situation. But like at the same time, I think starting a company, you can never be ready to start a company. So I guess in retrospect, are you just happy it just played out the way it did? It sounds like, for all the new learnings and challenges you're facing every day, you're seeming like you're just slowly checking off all the boxes from raising your initial first, second kind of early rounds of funding to finding a co-founder to creating a small team to now building multiple products. It to me, it seems like a very impressive inspirational story. And for you, I'm sure it just feels like today is like any other day and you're just trying to figure it out and putting out fires. But are you happy the way it turned out? Of course, you really can't change the past or the future anymore. But I guess looking back, sometimes I kind of want to ask, like, do you kind of chuckle to yourself and be like, wow, like I can't believe we are where we are today, and it just I thought my life was gonna go one way, we're here, and it's great.
I'm never the type of person who has like a 2, 5, 10 year plan.
Mhm.
I kind of just roll with the punches. And so I think you're completely right. I don't think anyone's ever ready to start a company. And I think the threat of deportation was definitely a forcing function for me to start the company. But I have this kind of intrinsic self-confidence in a way where, I think I could figure out most things that life will throws my way. That really helped. It's like, oh, okay, this happened. I can't really change what happened. I can, be sad about it for maybe like 2 hours, and then after that, I just gotta figure it out from there.
Mhm.
And I think that kind of attitude is really important in a founder.
So I guess for people who are just resonating with this, what is your next product that you and your team are working on, and what's the timeline of it going live?
Yeah, we're gonna keep that close to our chest, but kind of what we're currently working on and our main initiative for this next 6 months is making sure our first two products is as good as possible. There's still a lot of work that needs to be done to make sure that all the flows are smooth. We want to build peer-to-peer payments for our banking product. We want users to be able to see, what active subscriptions they have coming out of their bank account. We want to build ATM maps, so being able to, easily identify what ATMs are near you in the best way possible. So, just building features for our first two products is our main focus for the next 6 months.
And I guess just as a final topic before we close, for people who are sincerely excited about your mission and hope to one day apply, what are some of the future roles that you think you might be hiring for into the future? And if people want to apply, how would they apply?
Yeah, that's great. We're always hiring engineers and designers. So, even if we're not hiring, we're willing to make roles if you're an exceptional person. We're also going to be hiring someone on the legal side. That plays into kind of our next product, but we want to hire a legal professional in-house, possibly a general counsel. And you can find us at joinellis.com/careers. So that's joinellis.com/careers. And our role should be listed there. If you think there's a role for you that's not there, we have a general application as well, and just generally tell us how you think you can help us, and what you would like to do at the company.
And one more time, aside from just the core competencies of engineering and design, are there any specific things you would also be kind of looking for the X factor within an applicant? I know you mentioned if they had some exciting projects on the side, or they're able to show through a variety of perhaps like different ventures or projects, the important elements that you'd be looking for in terms of like your team, whether it's like moving fast, keeping things simple. What are some things people can do to maybe stand out to hopefully be able to be one step closer to join your team?
So two things. I think it's really, really helpful if you were either an immigrant or an international student. I want someone who viscerally understands the pain to work at Ellis. I think that's a really, really good thing, at least for our company. And then second, what I found is people who worked at school publications or newspapers or a yearbook, I really like hiring. It's the closest thing to a startup that you can get in a traditional educational system. And so I was the editor of my yearbook in high school. It's the closest thing there is to being a founder. I think there's a bunch of founders that also came out of the Stanford Review. Parker Conrad at Rippling was the editor at the Harvard Crimson. I think if you look at the history of editorial newspapers at universities and high schools, and then founders or early stage startup employees, I think that crossover is very high.
That's super interesting. So if you're listening and you have, or you might know of anyone who has a great background in editorial and publication, and they think there's no chance they can work or break into the tech industry, proving you wrong here, and you should totally apply to Ellis.
Yeah, absolutely.
But Sampei, thank you. I just want to thank you again. I personally learned a lot through your journey, and I just really want to thank you for a lot of the experiences that you just lived through, from graduating college all the way to present day and running Ellis. I definitely personally can relate to your pain that you're addressing, that the company's addressing, and I know that a lot of people who are listening can also do the same as well. And so I'm particularly excited to see the team continue to execute on all the other verticals and exciting products into the future, and to see what you and your team are going to do in the next 3 to 5 years. So I definitely want to appreciate it. And for anyone who's listening, who wants to get involved, who is worried that they might not have a legal design engineering background in the short term, as Sampei put it really well, they're always looking for great talent. And of course, if you have that editorial experience, make sure you fine print asterisk on that for the team to review. But thank you so much again. And it was filled with a lot of insightful nuggets, and I wish nothing but success for you and your team.
Of course. Thanks, Preston.
Wonderful. And we'll keep in touch soon. Thank you so much.
Likewise.